Folks, yet another day, yet another dollar, yet another day in the episode of the Autotrends podcast. We are really fired up to be back on set and believe it or not, recording our 24th episode. And we have an incredible guest on today, Lauren McCullough, CEO of Tromml, going to bring so much insights into our industry, into the marketing, into how you should look at data sets and how you should be thinking about your organization. But really, before we get to that, I just want to say, welcome our listener base. It is growing every single day. It's really been humbling to watch the industry evolve. We have a listener base growing in Asia, believe it or not, in Africa, in Europe, and obviously in North America. South America is a little bit struggling. So Brazil, come on, baby, let's go. But regardless, it's just really such an exciting time. Our whole focus when we started the Autotrends podcast was to be the platform and the voice of the industry through every aspect, from a marketing, distribution, manufacturing, from enterprise to the small guy, from the young up and coming technicians to the seasoned veterans. So it's very much an honor that we continue this, and I personally just feel so indebted to the industry. I love the industry. I'll never leave. But regardless, it is very exciting, and we are excited to host Lauren today. But without further ado, Lucas, man, how are you doing there, pal?
Absolutely fantastic. We're happy to have Lauren here today, obviously, Gideon, and I'm fired up for this episode. Lauren, are you happy to be here?
It's
happy to be here.
Exciting.
Good.
Lauren, real quick, let's give you a formal Autotrends introduction.
Oh, baby. Here we go.
Where is it?
Gideon, don't fuck it up, okay?
Ladies and gentlemen, the party has just begun.
Yeah, we got some.
Wow. That's
Lauren's favorite song.
Oh, no, regardless. Hey, so we are very excited to welcome Lauren McCullough, CEO of Tromml. Tromml is really doing some exciting things in the industry. I think we're going to learn a lot about this from Lauren today and what they do, but not just what Tromml does, but really I think where deficiencies have happened in the industry. And just, looking at her, Ohio University graduate. What's up? That'll baby.
Yeah.
Entrepreneur, industry pioneer, and enabling part sellers. And truly looking at the impactful insights that can really develop your growth. And so without further ado, Lauren, we're very excited and welcome to the Autotrends podcast.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll kind of dive right in. I think today we'll touch on a lot of topics, but again, it's really about the industry and how we can move it forward in a positive manner. But we'd love, as always, this is your episode, and we'd love to just learn a little bit more about yourself and maybe walk us through your journey into the automotive. I think everyone gets there at a different path. But yeah,
never
just walk. Yeah, I know. Just walk us through like how you got in and maybe even your start kind of coming up through college and what makes you tick. I mean, you've led multiple startups. I think everyone knows you got to have some fortitude. It ain't always easy, right?
Oh no, every day is hard. It's every day's hard, but it's fun. You gotta fall in love with the work, I think, or you drive yourself crazy. But yeah, so yeah, a little bit about my background. So I know you brought up, I am originally from Ohio. I'm from the kind of Southeast Ohio area. And I would say if you would have asked 19-year-old self, Lauren, like if she would be running a company with auto part sellers, like no way. Like there's nothing in what I'm doing today was on my list as, entering college professional. But I think what I had always had a little bit of a knack for is I like to disrupt things. I like to build new things. I like to create things. And the challenge is when you enter into that and you think you're going to do that in the public or nonprofit sector, you're just walls of red tape. There's just it's so hard to get things done. And when I was going into my college career, I was doing track. I was doing a bunch of extracurriculars. And so I just didn't really have patience to wait on things. And that is, I think, somehow how I stumbled into the world of entrepreneurship. And originally that was on the support side. So really supporting companies that were in the same seat that I'm in today. I'm helping to understand how to kind of get those initial traction points of their business. And that was work I really liked doing. And for the most part, that's what I did for the first period of my career. And I really gravitated always towards, I would say like big problems in boring places is how I originally used to say it. Like I didn't want to build like consumer apps and all this stuff. I was like, there's important business problems that are getting ignored every day. And so I always gravitate towards those startups. I think that's how I got into the automotive industry, is working with a company in that specific capacity. And we weren't, when I started there, our niche was not in, e-commerce automotive. We kind of, as I went through like the discovery phase, because I was the first hire there, we kind of found that as like a niche where there was just a huge gap in opportunity. And after spending a couple years there, I just really loved the industry. And I felt like there was, it was a lot of opportunity, and also just like really good folks, a lot of change happening, right? This is 2019, 2020. And as I came back out to what I was doing before, which was kind of on that fractional support, like I was a fractional VP of growth for a bunch of different software companies. I had a colleague of mine approach me, and he was like, hey, we work really well together. And I feel like there's a bunch of opportunities in the automotive industry. And the one that I can't stop thinking about is what we roughly described in the early days is most of these sellers don't know where they're actually making money. Like that was kind of like what we've heard over and over is they're like, I see my sales go up. I'm looking at my bank account and I have no idea what's happening in the middle. And there's so much opportunity, like all of the opportunity is in the middle, right? And especially if you're a reseller, if you're in more of a commodity type of product category, and even if you are more on the specialty equipment SEMA side, like as it got more and more competitive online, the need to be data-driven and differentiation became like a life or death situation in a lot of cases. And I think that the competitive nature in some of the marketplaces was driving some people out.
Hold it real quick. Is somebody, something's dinging on the back in the background, or is it me?
On my end?
It's a meeting notification, like a ring doorbell. Maybe grandma showed up with cookies.
Mine? I didn't hear anything. Lucas,
Oh, you didn't? Did you hear it, Lucas? You're muted, Lucas. Okay, go ahead, Lauren.
I did not hear a single thing. No.
Okay, sorry. I'm not. Okay, then maybe it was me. Sorry, I didn't mean to stop the train there. My bad. Yeah, Granny showed up with cookies.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, go ahead. Sorry about that, Lauren.
All right.
No problem. Yeah. But yeah, so we were just, really recognizing, and again, this is kind of, I think, even if you, and I know you guys have been in the industry longer than I have. And so like we saw this like rise of e-commerce happen, right? In like the, 2010 to 2020. And it like had that huge spike in 2020, 2021. Like people got their stimulus checks, everyone's sales went up. And then, but again, that margin that people were operating on was just getting thinner and thinner. And the people we saw being really successful were data-driven. They knew their specialty in market. They knew what made them unique. They knew what their competitive advantage was, whether that's buying power, whatever. And so that really kind of led into what Tromml became. And the name Tromml actually comes from the piece of equipment in gold mining that separates all the dirt from the gold nuggets.
Oh, wow. What a name. That's so I watched Gold Rush. Like I've been watching.
That's exactly how this name happened.
Years, man. I know that show so well.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah,
I love
my
that.
My co-founder one weekend, he's like, because we were like messing around with different company names in the early days, and it wasn't super top of mind because like when you're early enough, like it doesn't matter. And we're like, oh, we got to figure out a name someday. And he's like, I just spend the whole weekend watching Gold Rush and I have a name for us. And like, it had to explain to me the whole situation. But I was like, I like that. That's like some really good imagery, because that's what the automotive industry is. It's like we have these mountains of data and most of it's just dirt. Most of it's just noise. Yeah. But there's these like really important gold nuggets. And if you're going through this, if you're trying to assess how to make data-driven decisions and are just downloading reports, analyzing them Excel, like finger punching things in, that's like going through with like a sifting pan, right? Like you're just like trying to see if you can find something. And that's really where we feel like, machine learning really thrives, is like the ability to ask so many different questions, so many ways, if you have the data structured ready. And so that's really where our sweet spot is we automate the ingestion of all the different data around like sales data and cost centers, so we can get an accurate landed cost of order. And because we have that landed cost and we can normalize that, give them product level P&L, understand how that's moving, then we really see ourselves becoming a monitoring solution for these e-commerce stores, and then ultimately measuring the impact of their changes over time, so we can really start to prioritize things based on the dollar value that they can bring back to the organization.
That is okay. The name's awesome. So like, I'm just curious on your instincts, and I have my kind of sense on it. How many, because I have firsthand experience on it, how many people, whether you're a manufacturer, distributor, retailer, are not aware of maybe what's actually happening with the data?
Most.
I agree with that. I agree
A
with that.
vast majority, and to different degrees. Like, so when we work with clients, most of our clients we work with now don't have any type of data warehouse. They just
Yeah.
kind of have their different systems they operate in. So we
I
vertically
pull from this
integrate.
selling channel. I pull from this selling channel. I
Yeah.
pull from here, but it's all in a
Exactly.
different type of format. And we say, okay, well, here's the gross profit. Okay, you're not taking
Yeah.
into account your cost to serve. You're not taking into the PayPal fees that hit you. You're not taking into account any chargebacks. You're not taking into account any bullshit that maybe you're just, I don't know what it is, because it's not all in the same data set.
Exactly. And it gets hidden. So like, one of the issues that we've had come up a lot with a couple of people that are using the Shopify platform and are using their shipping label creation, which is great because it actually offers pretty competitive rates. But the problem is like getting visibility into those shipping costs is really difficult. And they have these things called shipping adjustments that flare up. And for one of our clients, they got hit with like a $1,200 shipping adjustment charge on a $400 item. Now, they're selling so much volume that if we don't pick those things up, they just get missed and keep
That's right.
happening over and over again. And those profit leaks, those missed opportunities are nearly impossible to find when you have, manual inconsistent reporting. You don't have a source of truth. And then when you start getting to some of the bigger manufacturers, they'll have like a data warehouse that kind of works, but usually they stop at visualization. Like, that's where this ends, is like some static reports and visualizations. And so that's why even when we're speaking to those folks, we can still provide that monitoring solution on top. So, hey, let your data warehouse run, use your existing visualization tools, but we can come in and add a layer in on top to let you know, hey, there's something you need to go look at over here. And that's really what we want to be able to do, is like, if you want to say like retail especially is whack-a-mole, like we're like, all right, we're giving you like a better indication of like which holes you need to watch. And that's what we want to be able to provide.
And in personal experience, what most e-commerce organizations do, I mean, really like high level, you're looking for A and B movers, and then you're looking for your most profitable movers, and you want what I have seen time and time again is an A mover or B mover or even a C mover is moving out of your warehouse, whether you're a manufacturer, whether you're a distributor, whether you're an e-tailer. It doesn't matter who's selling it, but it's moving a lot. And maybe there is a deficiency on something with the data, and the shipping is being miscalculated. And then whenever it gets into UPS, they actually do an adjustment because maybe you're shipping too much air. I'm trying to recall the exact verbiage for shipping air. There's a word for it, and it's slipping my mind. And then they make an adjustment on your bill, and instead of that being a $25 shipping where you collected, say, $28, it actually is $95. But you've shipped hundreds and thousands of those things, and then you figure that out at the end of the quarter, or you figured it out whenever you pull the data, and you're like, holy shit! But that data is coming from the carrier potentially, right? They're making adjustment on your account, and therefore your platform or your selling channel, whatever it is, if you have more than one, is not picking it up in real time. Therefore, you just shipped thousands of items at a loss. And when you look at parts distributors or parts organizations that are not finding their bottom line, their net income at the end of the day, right? Your cost, your sales, cost of goods, you have your cost to serve, right? The labor in between, what happens there. They're not monitoring it to a level that can indicate we need to make an adjustment, or we need to pull this SKU from the platform, because it's becoming a loss. It's not even a loss leader. It's a bankruptcy tool.
Yeah. Loss leader means that you're losing money on it, right? That's the difference. Like it's got a strategic value. And we recognize there are SKUs like that, and we can ignore that, right? We're not going to keep like blasting you like as an learning platform, we don't want to keep blasting you about those SKUs, but we want to know is not only when did that, A mover turn into a C mover, right? When did that become like a low margin or unprofitable product? But also like what other things are going wrong? Like, if you're selling 400,000 items, maybe the, 280th most profitable item or best selling item you have, what if that all of a sudden became the 900th? What happened? Like what if that thing is, maybe you're the only one with inventory, right? Because if you can notice that there are abnormalities and discrepancies in the way products are moving, then there's a strong indication that like there's something at least a human needs to review here. Problem, opportunity, we may not know.
Something happened in the marketplace.
Something happened.
And I think that's a really good point. And I think that that's a really good call out, because what we see in automotive a lot is referred to as, say, a national back order, right? So you have your OE, okay, and the OEs are being manufactured by an aftermarket manufacturer, and they have OE division, they have aftermarket division. So you have the OE, something happened available, then you have the aftermarket version, and then you have other aftermarket companies that come in and they basically reverse engineer the product and they sell it, right? That's what the aftermarket is. And what I have seen so often is, wow, we had a spike in this particular SKU. Okay, let's go do some digging. Why have we sold them all at the shop? And I recall, I come up through the distribution world. I recall in our online sales channels, we'd have a spike in an item, right? And boom, we were wiped out immediately. And then I have the procurement team coming to me, yelling at me, why are you selling all those products? And I said, well, because they're in the inventory file. We're selling them. They're for sale. And they said, well, no, they're on national back order. So we have all these issues in the supply chain. But we have to push those items into our other locations to support our other selling channels of the business, right? And so it's a complete breakdown of the entire spectrum. And I don't know there's any problem until they're all sold.
Yep.
And I'm like, well, we've already committed it. We've already committed it to the person. If you want me to remove or protect inventory, you have to tell me. But we don't know until the problem has already come and the fire's already there and it's getting worse and it's getting worse. And now we're not acting in a smart manner. We're just being a reactionary organization that, as you all know, reactionary organizations are not going to be the bell cows of forward-thinking organizations, right? That you can catch it before. So I don't know why that just popped into my head, but that was a really great use case of exactly what you're saying.
Exactly. And it happens across the different business models and supply chains. And we, as a solution, we try not to like advise people what to do. That may change in the future. Never. Yeah, but like we just are like, go look at this, because if you think about the example you just gave, Gideon, is what if on day 2, you would have gotten an alert that said, hey, your sales on this item in the past 3 days have gone up 300%. Now you can have that conversation with your team right away. And you can do what humans do, which is make good strategic decisions that are in the absence of data, perhaps, but at least you've got data to operate on. And it doesn't necessarily determine a strategy, but what it does is it creates awareness early enough that things haven't escalated. And then you make the strategic move, right? Do we have something that we can use to our competitive advantage right now? Do we have something that's potentially like creating a problem later? But at least we know that it's happening.
How this is a weird, maybe a dumb question. How soon? So if you look at organizations, companies, so let's just say, I guess all of the above, right? Everyone's at a different cycle, right? You have small manufacturers that are just getting going. They're $3-5 million a year companies. Then you have some that are multi-billion. At what point do you see organizations really should look into understanding your data? Because if your data set's not that big, well, it's just not really an issue yet.
Yeah.
But organizations start to look at, guys, we really need to bring in a improved analytical kind of process here so we understand actually what's happening.
And what's the data they should focus on, I think, is also key. If you're small, what's the data you should focus on getting?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of depends on your position, right? It's a hard question to answer. I mean, I would argue that you should always be monitoring margin on your data. Like you should know that relatively close to profitability of your products across channels at every point in time. The difference is if you're processing 10, 15 orders a day, like you don't need us. You can do this by hand. Like this is not an issue for you. Or if you're selling 10 products, even call it a couple hundred products, like you still have to do what value we're bringing to people. The difference is you don't need something alerting you because you can see it. because there's not that much data to sort through. And so like, that's what we like, even because we'll often talk to people who are new sellers or really ramping up their e-commerce. And that's a conversation I'll have with them is like, listen, like I can give you some frameworks and some like Excel documents that you need to start operating on because you need to start being data driven like right now. And, you may be able to like be in a position where you can sacrifice profitability just for volume, for getting your feet off the ground. Like you're running it. Yeah. Depending, right? Depending on the business.
What I've seen in this business, and I've probably heard it way too many times. And I think my brain is just numb to it, is they say, well, we're going to go through a marketplace channel and we're going to just price it at a really low margin so we gain market share. And then we're going to move those customers over to somewhere else. It's like, okay, shut up. No, you're not. Those customers are in a marketplace because they're looking for the best price and they don't really care. You're never going to have that repeat business. So stop thinking that way. If you're going to sell on a marketplace, make sure you're making money on it, period.
Exactly.
Because all you're doing is you're paying a big high cost acquisition for that customer and you paid 12% or whatever, and you're never going to get that customer back potentially. So stop with that. I advise on that all the time.
I agree. Yeah. The only like maybe, and I still agree with you. I think that there's an opportunity for certain sellers to be willing to operate. And I didn't mean no margin, but a low margin.
I'm with you.
If they're learning, like I see sometimes people will set up a website and they'll set up an eBay store, let's say, for example, and they'll really price their products competitively on eBay, which by the way, if you're going to do that, just make kits and bundles, honestly, like differentiate yourself some way.
Totally.
And just crush that. But they might want to do that so they get a little bit more buying power. They can see what products are moving. And it's intentionally a learning feeder. Like they know that this is a learning feeder for them, but you still have to at least break even. Like you can't continue to bleed money. And the problem is like, you'll see sellers who are on Amazon, eBay, Walmart, whatever. And even sometimes they're on websites and they're selling prices that like I'll talk to a WD or the manufacturer and they're like, I can't even get that price. Like there's no way this company is making money on this sale. And my problem with that, as someone who wants to be an advocate for the industry and lifting the industry up, is you've now created problems for everyone else. Like we are now in a race to the bottom environment. And like we won't work with sellers who have that type of mindset because if you're just trying to like drive out competition and bleed people dry, I believe you're doing a disservice to everyone. And that's just like, it's not a good cultural fit.
I've taken that position very early on is, and I've named them before. I could name them again, but I know, people that do that in our industry, I've sat in very many manufacturer, price models where like, look, we're trying to have our online price model to where we make money, the distributors make money and everyone makes money. He goes, and so the second we publish this program, it goes right back to no margin for the distributor because the e-tailer is basically just pumping everyone to the bottom, pitting everyone up against each other. And what happens is it creates an unhealthy environment, right? It's like a family that you just have really just an unhealthy feeling, but you're like, I need him or I need her because she makes more money, or if we don't, the lights, you know what I'm saying? And so what it becomes is it becomes a dependency. And so when dependencies happen inside our industry, it's going to breed a poor culture, and poor culture equals, less net income. And I've said it from the get-go. If we're starting to talk about price wars, we're doing a disservice to ourselves, and we need to keep, because it's opportunity cost. Right? I mean, there's only so much demand, right? We know the VIO, we know the vehicles in operation. We know failure points for all of these brands. Just look at data, and so we know there. If my alternator goes down, I've got to get it from somewhere, right? And so there's no point in us not protecting our own industry. Make sure that we all have margin that we can make a living and pay our bills and pay our employees. And so I just don't subscribe to that model. And again, I understand let's give the customer a good price point. Let's not price gouge, but let's just operate ethically and morally in a fundamental manner that we can get the product to the customer in the quickest amount of time. Make sure that everyone is making a margin to operate their business in a healthy manner and keep it within the industry. That's what we do. But
100%.
Yeah, to your point, I mean, the race to the bottom, we need to get rid of that thinking and that mindset because it's really an unhealthy place to be.
Yeah. Well, and that's too, like when I took, I'll talk to younger sellers and they'll, we'll have these conversations. Well, if I'm not more competitive on price, then like, how am I gonna, compete with everyone else? And like, we did a YouTube course earlier in the year called, so there's we went through, as a startup, we went through an accelerator called Techstars, and
Yeah.
the managing director of our program wrote a book called, right back here. I'll do a little promo for him. It's called Sell More Faster. It's a great book. Typically, this is built for startups. This book is actually
What is it again?
incredible.
Say it again. So what
Sell
is
More
it called again?
Faster.
Sell More
Yeah.
Faster. Lucas, note that. So when we throw it up,
Yeah,
post
no,
it
I
up
know
there.
that as well. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
Oh, do you?
I'm familiar
Okay.
with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
So Amos is a good friend, mentor of ours. And this actually happened because a client of ours, we gave it to, we sent him a copy, or Amos sent him a copy, and he shared it with his sales team. And he's like, our sales team's aligned now. And this is a company who I'm really proud of, like, to have as a client, because they knew they had to differentiate themselves. They knew that they had to build a brand. They think about lifetime value. They think about what makes us unique as a company. And so we did a YouTube course earlier in the year just called Sell More Parts Faster. And the whole thing, and I could use my entrepreneurship background, like working with startups before, to just basically say, like, know what problem you're solving, know who you're selling to, and what are they actually buying. Because in the case of this client that I'm talking about, the name's Shock Surplus. They're really great brand, offered suspension parts. And why I think that they're such a good brand is because they do have a good understanding of who they're selling to and why people buy from them. And like, if I'm going to spend $1,400 or $2,400, $5,000, whatever, on a new suspension system for my car, I'm not going to buy that off Amazon. Like, no way. No way am I going to buy my Bilstein shocks off of Amazon. I'm going to go to someone who knows what they're talking about, because I know that if I have a question on the install, I can call. I know that they're quality. I know that they're going to send me the entire project kit. And no matter what you're selling, like, there's a guy I met on YouTube who has a pretty big parts store. And he was like, I know people can go buy these parts other places, but they support me as a creator. So they come to my store and they buy from me. And he's doing really well. And so there's a version of that. There's a lot of other opportunities for versions of that out there, whether it's based on functionality of the product, whether it's based on year, make, model. And if you can figure out that niche as a retailer, or figure out that niche as a distributor, right? What manufacturer, whatever you're going to be, now all of a sudden you don't have to compete on price. And that's why kits and bundles are such a good opportunity for a lot of folks, because it takes that project in mind and builds the entire cart for you. And now your AOV has gone through the roof, because in 2 clicks, I had exactly what I needed for that project.
Kits and bundles. You know what reminds me every time we talk about kits and bundles is the Joe Dirt movie. Snakes and sparklers are the only things I like. Every time I hear kits and bundles, they're like,
Kits
guys,
and
I got the strategy. I got the strategy. Kits and bundles. I'm like, snakes and sparklers.
It is like that, yeah. But it's like, and it's not the only way, but if people are like, if I can answer one way of like how to differentiate yourself, that's not a bad one. It does take a lot of time, and that's why it makes you different, because most people don't take the time to do it, because you have to figure out the fitment for that kit and bundle.
So when we start to look at this, because I think that this is really important, and I certainly think there's a lack of it in the industry. I 100% agree with you. I think you guys are really on the right track. I think you're in the right industry. I think we have a lot of the older generation kind of aging out that came up in the 90s and 2000s and even the 80s, man. There's a lot of guys that have been here for 30, 40 years in the industry. And we're seeing kind of a changeover from, like the Gen Z moving into more executive leadership roles. Sam Russo was on not too long ago, and she talked a lot about that. And I totally agree with that. And I think we really need to be smarter as an organization. But my question is when we look at the different pieces, from manufacturers to distributors to part sellers, obviously international trade as well, what you're talking about, do you think that should maybe veer more to the manufacturers versus distributors, or do you think it's all else equal, applies to all of the above?
Yeah. So I'll say this. I think it applies to all the above. Our bread and butter is retail. That's just where we started. That's where we knew, especially in the DIY market side of retail. But I do think that business models are changing, and it's honestly kind of different. If you look at, like, we just call it the SEMA versus the Apex side, right? The special equipment versus the aftermarket.
Yeah, totally.
And then you can throw like power sport. I don't know, power sports and heavy duty are kind of their own too. Like
Yeah.
they kind of all have these different dynamics at play. And functionally for us, like as a profit monitoring solution, like it's just math. So it fundamentally doesn't matter. Like everyone still needs automated aggregation of data. Everyone still needs a data warehouse. What we have to pay attention to is what business questions are we alerting them to? And what we really see as our position in the market is the fact that a lot of these brands, whether it be the holding company, the brand itself, have every single one of those business models. They have a manufacturing arm, they have a distribution arm, and they have a retail arm. And so for us as a company, we need to and that's why we built this only for the automotive industry, because we knew some of those important nuances were blocking people from adopting existing technology. Is like, you can't, like if you're selling on Amazon, eBay, Walmart, your own website, you've got a B2B distribution channel, you're selling on parts tech, you've got a manufacturing arm with an SAP. There's no way that like an existing tool is going to pull that together for you. But you
Well, there
need to
isn't.
have a source of truth.
Well,
Yeah.
even as from a distribution perspective, they have most all the big distributors, they have their own white labeling product line,
Yep.
right? And by definition, although they may be manufacturing that through the bigger brands and they're just white labeling it, right? But once you put your label on a product, Tromml's parts or Tromml's brakes or anything, once you put your label on that part, you are the IP. You own that product. You own the risk. And so I think it actually is applicable across the board. It's not, well, you're a distributor and you buy other products. Do you have one white labeled brand? Yes. Okay. You are the manufacturer. You own the IP. That's your brand. You can do whatever you want with it. And so I think that's applicable across all spectrums.
Yep. And we're kind of at this shift, and we just have to pay attention as a company to like being able to be agile to support those different business models, because we don't like, I can make guesses how products are going to flow in 5 to 10 years, but I don't know, right? Like things are changing, like in the fact that like, cars are becoming computers. So the type of products even getting sold is going to start to shift, especially I would say like probably not next 5 years as much as like, when we look 10 years out. And so, we see our job is to help people get through those changes by better understanding what's happening within their own data. And eventually I want to be able to plug into with market intelligence tools so we can be a little bit more dynamic too. But to us, like that's our service to the industry, is like, I can't tell you how the entire industry is going to shift. What I can tell you is what's happening within your own business so you can adapt and change and modify.
And Lauren, when's the best time for people to get in touch with you? Let's say, when should an organization say, geez, I got to get in touch with Lauren, regarding my data and understand my data to interpret my data? But when's the best time?
Yeah, I mean, so we find that like for companies that are doing probably about 50 orders a day is usually when the problem starts to hit. Now there are reasons that can be higher or lower, but usually at 50 to 100 is when you start to really notice the pain of like, I can't keep an eye on everything anymore.
Of course.
And so that's often when we'll talk to people, and there's sometimes when we'll talk to some folks that are a little early. And like I said, we'll try to give them some tips and tricks. Cause like we want to work with clients who are already asking these questions themselves. Because if you've just asked yourself, like if you've just done the first margin analysis when you're working with us, then you haven't had that rich nature to like understand what challenges, because we're very hands-on with our clients still right now. And so we want to know what challenges they have. And so I'd prefer people to be doing this in Excel for 6 months and then come work with us, because we're gonna have a better fit, because otherwise you don't know what you don't know. And we can advise you what worked for our other clients, but you haven't figured out the nuances for yourself. And we want to make sure we're providing value.
Well,
and I think
you guys,
the advantage.
go ahead,
Gideon.
No,
I was
go
just going to say, I think the advantage to what Lauren is saying is that she's working with these organizations every day, so she's seeing what these successful organizations are doing. So maybe these not unsuccessful organizations, but these newer organizations can, she can offer advice to them and saying, look, I know what works, I know what doesn't work, and that's what these guys are doing who are successful, and then implement that over on this side. So I think that's great.
Yeah. And we feel like strongly about, being a, force multiplier, like as like the industry kind of goes through this. And so we do a lot of education, we do a lot of content marketing, and that's something I just personally like am interested in and I think is important, because like while we need to put as much resources we can to supporting our existing clients that like help us pay our bills, we also need to be forging the path for the next generation of sellers that
100%.
we're not ready to support. But like, that's why we built that like online course. Cause we're like, here's at least something like when I talk to these younger folks that are getting started, like I couldn't like when I was watching, 2022, I was watching all these people who I just became such good friends with. I was just watching their businesses just tank. They just had no margin left and they were doing the marketplace game. Like, something would break and they bled through every bit of profit they had because automations break. And it kind of killed me, honestly. Like I was like, these are my friends. Like my parents were small business owners. Like I hated seeing this happen. And so like whatever we can do to try to potentially change that trajectory through people, one, that's just like forging a long-term relationship with future clients for us, but it's also just, I think, lifting the industry up, which is something we all care a lot about.
Well, it's about success. I mean,
Mhm.
like that at the end of the day, that's why. I mean, certainly money does not motivate me, but also I have a family, right? I mean,
Mhm.
we have to, we want to have a successful life and work hard and do all these things. And I think that this is one area that's really, I think there's going to be a heightened focus. And I'm curious in your take on this. I'm seeing a major shift with how manufacturers think about their online presence.
Mhm.
If we, I'm a big believer of like, if you want to think about what the future is, look behind you and
Mhm.
understand and see if there was certain trends. So we look at like the 90s and The Rock comes on and Amazon gets into books, right? We were probably part of the same generation that was buying our books
Mhm.
on Amazon.com, right? In class. And by the way, I didn't know you
Mhm.
played soccer. I mean, track. I didn't know you ran
Yeah.
track. I didn't know that. I'm curious. I'll ask you
There's
more
your new
questions.
fact for the day.
Yeah, I know. I didn't know that. I thought you ran pretty fast whenever I saw you running, but I wasn't. That is like a shit, high hurdler, high jump or whatever, pole vaulter. But no. So like, what I think we're seeing is a shift, and I think when you look at manufacturers historically, they've always been B2B working through the distributors.
Mhm.
But I think the connective tissue between manufacturers and distributors, I think our industry needs to really start thinking about kind of the Amazon model and how
Mhm.
they've modeled their business. Their whole thing was like everything's in stock at all times, all industries, right? Well, let's just look at the automotive. You have distributors, you have manufacturers. Think of manufacturers. They've only really worked with them through like, okay, distributor comes and buys more product, the manufacturer yells at distributor, why aren't you selling more, right? And
Mhm.
I think what is going to happen is there's going to be a shift in a D2C to where it becomes more of an open, like kind of an
Mhm.
open platform or open partnerships where volume generated from a manufacturer is actually being parsed into their distribution network to help kind of rise all tides, right? Protect margin, rise all tides. And I think
Yeah.
when you look at margin based margin management, margin based best practices, how is your marketing dollars being deployed, and understanding those insights, I think that is actually going to shift over the next 2, 3, 5, 10 years in a
Mhm.
big way. But I'd
Yeah.
love what's your take on that?
Yeah, I agree. And again, I think it really depends on the product category. Like I think it's just like such different answers
Totally.
because like in the do it yourself versus the do it for me, the way products flow is just like it is different, right? Like you have something as simple as like you have like think about windshield wipers and then you have brake pads and then you have like I don't know, a new alternator, right? Those are
Mm.
very different levels of sophistication on like who's going to actually do that replacement. And those are all technically something that can be in the DIY market. But like everyone can replace their windshield wipers. So Amazon, great home. I think it's like their second biggest category I heard, right? And
Wipers?
then yeah, wipers or for
Yeah.
automotive, I mean.
That
Yeah, it's like
I believe
huge.
that.
Like
Yeah.
if you sell like Amazon, right? But then if you start going down into these other markets, like now you're talking about the distribution, like, okay, are these going to the big four and brick and mortar? Because if I'm a manufacturer, like I have to be omnichannel. And I think
You
I
have to.
think that's actually my answer is it's yes. Yes, you should have these products available on your website. And I know on the SEMA side, like a lot of folks will have their products on a site, it routes to a distributor and ships to the client. And so they're basically just drop shipping their own products.
Mhm.
Cool, because the skill you have good customer service, you make great products, terrible distribution capabilities. So don't do the distribution, right? Great customer service, no product, no distribution, drop ship your products. Like
That's right.
know what value you create in the supply chain and some can do all, most can't do all well. But you just have to kind of know yourself and know how to get those products out faster. And I mean, there's a reason distributors exist in the automotive industry, right? Because they're really good at aggregating stuff and getting it out the door. Period.
So if again, let's look at the historical context. There's a ton of very large manufacturers that ultimately made a big push to cut the distributor out, right?
Mhm.
And what they found is their supply chain is just not efficient. They're not hitting that Johnny's Automotive 4-bay repair, and he does 50 grand a month of their products. And when you cut the distributor out, a competitive line goes in because Johnny, it's just they touch these little bitty nicks and crannies, these little markets, these big markets, right? And that's why they exist, and that's why they're. I think they're going to continue to support as we move into the digital era. I think they're actually going to be much more important. I think distributors that really focus on their efficient wave picking or pick pack process and their pick pack ship, and the ability to have a good margin but really effective services and service their regions. I think distributors that aren't thinking in that way are going to be negatively impacted because they just weren't forward on the digital era.
Yeah.
I've even said this, and I think I said this on our last episode, Lucas, is I think we're going to see a decrease in a decrease in sales operations, meaning we got, how do we grow our sales? Hire more sales guys. No. Hire more content people. Hire more catalog managers. Hire more. The richer our content, the richer our catalog, the equals the improvement in sales. And I think that also combines into your margin based practices.
Exactly. And that's how we don't right now, at least, like, do any content analysis. Like, we don't touch Aces Pies data, nothing like that. But what we do is tell people if you're going to spend, money, resources, time, energy, whatever, enhancing your content, which ones? Because if you're selling 300,000 items, like, trying to get through it is nearly impossible. But if we can say, hey, these are some high margin products that like have decreased in movement, right? And like, you can say, like, again, this movement and shifts in volumes and things like that. Hey, this is starting to increase in sales, but your conversions are still garbage. Great place to enhance content, right? Or, hey, you've got to, like, even if we look at a return spike, probably check your fitment data, right? Like, what's going on here? And and that's kind of where we think, like, putting that spotlight on things from profitability basically can help us decide what to do with our time, like what problems to solve, where to put more energy and improvements. It's just like, I kind of say, I'm like, it's like a proxy for, like, helping to set priorities. And at the end of the day, for us, like, we see our tool as a communication solution. Like, we're communicating priorities, and the way we communicate them is based on dollar value.
I think I don't know. I really enjoy that. That's so smart.
It's objective.
You become very smart, right? Okay, let's not focus, because I see that a lot. I see it a lot in organizations. They waste time. They're just time wasters, man. They don't really know. It's like everyone's just kind of walking blindly, and then they're like, and they're unhappy. Dude, let's get more focused. I love focus. Focus is important. We have to be focused. When you're focused on an objective, or you're focused on a business outcome, the probability of achieving the business outcome when you're focused on it is exponentially high. To your point, Pies and Aces, you guys don't evaluate. I don't think you need to. There's so many tools out there. I don't think that's not your job, but your job is to say, hey, here's an area that you should probably look at, because this is what we're just telling. That's the objective base from Tromml and our product line, and how we help you.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I mean, one of the things too, we're working with some of our clients also is like, okay, well, when you go into vendor conversations, like, how do you use data there? Because if you have 30 minutes a day
100%
to sit down with a sales rep, and you're just going to say, hey, give us better pricing, we're great clients, they're not going to do anything. But if we can give them a report that says, hey, here are the 10 SKUs that you have seen increasing in volume, or the 5 categories. And if you can use this to help inform your conversation with your rep, because a sales rep, a WD, a supply, or whatever, they want to help you, but you have to give them a case to take to their boss. And so one of the things that we've recognized, and that was actually like the first use case of Tromml, is we were at SEMA, and we like gave our first client, we're like, here's some reports, go talk to your vendors and let us know if these help. And that's kind of something that's always stayed in the spirit of what we do is like, hey, let's hand over this data and let's use this to inform those conversations so you can get
Absolutely.
better grades. You can say, hey guys, look at the shipments, the fulfillment speeds. Like we've been on a decline. Like that's and I have objective data, not this says like, hey, things seem to be coming out of the warehouse slower. It's just like, I've gotten hit with $9,000 in penalties on Amazon for late fulfillment. Like last quarter. And those things are happening. And like, and you're saying like, listen, if you want to still be my WD of choice, this has got to stop. And, you know, you can make those arguments, but having those as data-driven conversations, I think is like, I think it's going to be the only way to hold those conversations.
It is. I agree. I agree.
And it's already becoming kind of that way.
The age of, well, I know Joe and Bob and we've been buddies and we bass fish together. That's over, man. Bob and Joe are done. They're gone. They're bass fishing. Okay. They're retired. They're out of here.
Yeah.
Like that's done. Like let's move on. Let's be a little bit more advanced.
Yeah. And I think there's still like, you know, my observation is it's still a little bit of both. And I think maybe to some degree it always will be like I don't see us changing from like a relationship industry, but use that relationship and data. Like it's not one or the other.
I totally agree. Actually, I think I went a little too far there. I did not mean
I hear
that
you,
relationships won't matter, but we just need to be a little smarter. That's all.
Yep.
Relationships matter, but that's going to differentiate. It's like that's going to differentiate yourself. It's like somebody said, well, AI is going to deplete all of the lawyers, right? And it says, no, there's still going to be lawyers, but the good ones will figure out ways to leverage it and make them better and smarter. Winners will leverage the technology and data. I totally agree. Wow. Well, guys, as we wind down on time here, Lucas, anything else on your end?
No, that's fantastic. No, I think what Lauren has said has been very insightful, and very thankful for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no worries, Lauren. So you know, a lot of organizations looking at this. What's the best way that they can get in touch with you guys with Tromml? Love the name, by the way. I'll never forget that, man. Gold Rush, Parker Schnabel. Yeah. How did they get in touch with you? What's the best way to open up a discussion with your organization?
Yeah, so we have more information about our platform on tromml.com. It's TROMML, no E, like the actual piece of equipment. And then you can also email me directly. It's just lauren@tromml.com.
Awesome. Well, folks, as always, to our listener base, the best way to support the Autotrends podcast is to like and subscribe. And as always, if you do not like what you're hearing, or you do not like the content, or you think this is crap, go ahead and tell us. We actually enjoy that too. Or if you have a suggestion on how we could be better, please tell us that too. But as always, Lauren McCullough, CEO of Tromml, it has absolutely been a pleasure to have you on. And I'll tell you to the automotive industry, really a forward thinker here, a track star. I forgot. I didn't know that. And just a pioneer in enabling sellers to sell more, be very objective focused, margin based. As always, folks, we are the Autotrends podcast, the voice of the industry. We appreciate it, and we will see you next time.